My name is Larry Lohmann. I work for a little organization called the Cornerhouse, and we do a lot of solidarity work, a lot of advocacy work, and some research work on a whole range of social issues, whether it's the financial crisis or problems connected with British investment abroad, like in dams or in pipelines, problems with land rights, forests, and now climate change. And the reason we got involved in climate change is actually, I think it's telling, because we got involved in it not because we're a green group or we're interested in something called the environment. We got involved in it because it's become an important social issue. And I guess that's maybe one of the things I'd like to stress most in maybe discussions with trade unions. It's just to stress that, everybody says that, climate change is this new issue, this new environmental issue that's earth-shaking. It's the most important issue that's ever faced humankind, and so forth. And we have to drop everything, and we have to think about how we fit into the climate change solution. Well, we don't really look at it that way. We don't really look at climate change as a brand new problem, which has just come out of nowhere, and is very frightening and very science fiction and very technical. We look at it as a continuation of the same old social problems that trade unions, among others, have been facing for many, many decades, if not hundreds of years. Climate change is an issue like other environmental issues. It's an issue of equality, unequal access to resources, overexploitation of land, taking away people's land, taking away people's water, taking away people's air. Climate change really fits into this whole history of social problems, and I think it's wrong to see climate change as something entirely new, which has come out of nowhere and which threatens us. I think it's very alienating for us to look at climate change as a sort of science-y issue, or an issue for the technical people to talk about, or for the big people to talk about, or the governments to talk about. It's too difficult for the rest of us to deal with. I think it's a social issue like other social issues, and I think that's reflected. In our own work, I think that's reflected in the people that we're working with on the climate change issue. I work with, for example, a network called the Durban Group for Climate Justice. And the people in that network are not greenies. They're not sort of professional environmentalists and environmental lobbyists, environmental NGOs. Most of them are concerned with other issues. They're concerned with land rights. They're concerned with oil exploitation, the way oil companies have come in and taken over people's land in countries like Ecuador, like the US, like Canada, for example. We're also involved. We also work together in our network with a lot of people who are concerned with pollution issues, who live on the fence lines of polluting electricity generators that use fossil fuels, for example. And if you ask these people, is climate change a new issue? Is oil a new issue? Is there overuse of coal and fossil fuels? Is that a new issue? They'll tell you no, it's not a new issue. This is an issue we have to face every day, and we've been facing it for many years. People taking over our land in order to drill oil, people polluting our atmosphere and affecting our health because of the way the coal plants are sited in our communities, and the irresponsible way that they're using fossil fuels, and the power relations that enable them to do that. These are not new issues. Yet these are connected completely with climate change, in that climate change is all about fossil fuels. It is all about rights to land. It is all about rights to health, rights to air, and also rights to a livelihood that's not affected by the power plays of the big people. So climate change, in our view, is not a new kind of issue, and it ties very much in with, I think, the historical record of social movements, including the trade union movement, for fair treatment for everybody, for livelihoods, for a democratic discussion and democratic negotiations about what kind of lives people are allowed to live, what kind of lives people are entitled to live. It's very much that kind of issue for us. So we try to, in the network that I work with, we try to demystify the climate change issue to make it less of a technical seeming issue, which the governments, I think, are very happy for everybody to think it's a very technical issue, and we need to rely on the experts and the economists and the traders and so forth. But I think it's important from our perspective, and I would hope from a trade union perspective as well, to demystify that and to look at climate change in context as related to all of these other issues about rights to land and livelihood and health and so forth. So that's the way we approach it. And with that in mind, I mean, my sort of untutored feeling with respect to what role would the trade unions play in the climate issue? I guess I would turn that question around a little bit and say, no, how can people who are concerned with climate change but may not be acquainted with trade unions, how can they get involved in the trade union movement? How can they educate themselves about the trade union movement and its concerns and its historical concerns, and start from there in dealing with this problem? Because that's what we have to talk about when we're talking about the kind of social issues and political issues that trade unions have historically been associated with. So I turn around the question a little bit to make it a little less alienating. Start with what start with what trade unions are about would be my sort of untutored feeling, because that's going to be what the climate change issue is about. Maybe I should say a couple more things about why I think the climate change issue is really about these fundamental historical core issues. When we look at what causes the climate to be changing so rapidly and so catastrophically, politically it's actually not that difficult. There are basically two problems. One of the problems is that the atmosphere is being overused as a dumping space, basically by a rather small group of people in the world, the people who are digging up and burning and using fossil fuels, and using them very, expansively, using them in a very profligate way. The atmosphere is being overused by, people, and it's not by everybody. It's not everybody is responsible for climate change. Most of the world is not responsible for climate change. So it's an issue of overuse of what should be a public good, the atmosphere and the Earth's whole ability to clean itself. Too much carbon is being taken out of the ground and put into the air and put into the oceans and put into the vegetation and soil and so forth. This is the root of the problem. Too much is being taken out of the Earth, and it's a problem of equality, because this is not something which is being done by a sort of global consensus for the good of everyone. It's actually a very skewed kind of use of fossil fuels. It's actually a fairly small proportion of the Earth's population that is overusing this sort of atmospheric space, or this cleansing space that really should be regarded as a public good. So in that sense, the climate change problem is just another problem of power and abuse of power and undemocratic use of resources. And I think this is, if you put it that way, I mean, I think it's quite obvious that whatever role the trade unions have in this debate, it's not going to be different from the historical role trade unions have played in other social issues. You're going to be fighting for justice, going to be fighting for equality, going to be fighting for sort of democratic planning of what kind of life do we want? How do we want to use what is available to us in the Earth, and in a way that provides livelihoods and jobs for everyone. So I mean, I think that for me that's the way to approach the whole climate change issue, rather than talking about 2 degrees centigrade and 450 parts per million, and should we reduce 60% by 2050 or 75% by 2040. I mean, those are all important and interesting questions, but the climate change problem is about a lot more than that.